This is the Real Estate Wife Show, and I'm your host, Vinky Lumba, commercial real estate investor. And today I have a very, very good friend, Bethany Finch, with me. Welcome to the Real Estate Wife Show, Bethany.
Hey, Vinky, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to get together with you.
Likewise. A little bit about Bethany. Bethany is from American Made Home Solutions. She is passionate advocate of empowering business individuals and community leaders to achieve sustainable growth, to financial freedom, and create a lasting legacy to real estate and financial literacy. With over 25 years of experience, Bethany has founded and successfully managed 4 separate companies, including a credit hacking business, an executive rental business, a single family residential renovation business, and a multifamily syndication business. Today, we'll be discussing an interesting topic, tackling the workforce housing crisis with build to rent, or BTR. So Bethany, before we get started, I would like you to briefly introduce yourself and tell us, how did you become who you are today?
Oh boy. Well, let's see. I was born lots of years ago.
Not that
I got started years ago because I learned by the age of 10 that jobs were just a cuss word. I mean, they were, I needed money, but I needed to figure out a different way to do it, right? I was 10. They didn't want to hire 10-year-olds, things like this. So I had started to figuring out how to hustle when I was 10 and kept working and figured it out and was on my own most of the years growing up. So by the time I turned 18 and they're talking like college, I'm like, what do I need college for? Shoot, I've already had a college education and I'm way past you guys. But I still went, played their game and said, okay, this is for the birds. I'm done. So I needed to find a way to provide for my family and be flexible because I wanted to be home with my kids. So how that looked and what that looked like changed and varied through the years, which is why I did have so many different businesses through the years, is kind of figuring out that fit. And a lot of times you're still growing up. You're figuring out who you are, what you like, what you don't like. So that's what a lot of that was about for me early on.
So why workforce housing? That's the topic that you gave me that you wanted to talk about that. So what exactly is it, or how did you get involved in that?
So workforce housing, so everybody knows that there's a housing crisis all across this country. What they don't understand is the housing crisis is in different areas of housing. So for instance, they go to buy a house and they're just like, oh, there's no supply out there. So they just think that's where the housing crisis is. They don't stop to think about, oh, I can't rent a place. There's nothing available. Then, oh, that's where the housing crisis is. Nobody really knows the exact numbers of each of those because every time you ask a different agency, especially like HUD or any of them, your number is constantly changing. But it's like almost 8 million short across this country as far as housing. Now, the biggest bulk of that is what's considered in crisis is the amount of inventory available for workforce housing. And workforce housing is defined as the median income for that area. So for instance, if your rent is $1,700 a month, that income for that area, they need to be making $50,000 to $60,000 a year to be able to afford that. So if your income is much, much lower than that, then that's going to be a different price point and you're not going to be able to do that. Would be more like a luxury. So it's geared on that median income and making sure that the rent is at that price. Now, it's not affordable housing. It's not Section 8. It's not, poverty below poverty level. It's not anything defined like the government says there. It's basically that average wage for the area.
Interesting. So you were saying there's a certain class in the middle who do not qualify for the affordable housing or the lower income housing or the luxury homes. They're kind of sitting in the middle because they have certain affordability, I would say, standards there. So accordingly, they qualify for this housing. So what are some of the main challenges or the affordability issues that they face, all this workforce
Oh, yeah. So, what most people didn't see was during COVID, while everybody's locked down, they're not paying attention to what things got stopped. And one of the things that got stopped was construction. Most of your construction got stopped, and very few of it that got pushed through was workforce housing. The things that did get pushed through were custom homes,
Mm-hmm.
people that had the money to push through and go ahead, or luxury products, even some commercial, not multifamily, but commercial warehouse spaces and things got pushed through, but not multifamily and not workforce housing. So what that meant was when we come out of COVID and people are trying to move and there's a huge flux of workers now that can be remote that want to work from home but realize they don't want their 5 kids all piled into one room trying to do Zoom calls. They want
Yeah.
to be in some kind of house and situation or in a different scenario. They're looking and they're struggling because they're trying to move to areas that are more
Mm-hmm.
affordable, but then also still have a nice property, right? They don't want it to be. So we're focused on our build to rent projects on creating a community of single family homes. So it's a home, it's not an apartment, right? It's not stacked on top of each other. It's got a
Mm-hmm.
yard, it's got all the perks and amenities for the most part that a lot of your bigger multifamily, but they're houses. So people can spread back out and have those, but still afford it. So we have to keep that price down. We got to keep our costs down. We got to buy the projects right, all of that.
Yeah, let's touch on BTR a little bit later. Let's talk about a little bit about the workforce housing. Like there's affordability issue and there's a certain class that qualifies for these homes. So are these are like single family homes or the multifamily properties are qualified for the workforce housing as well?
So all of it, workforce housing simply refers to the price point.
Mm-hmm.
So what that in this situation, when we're building communities, we're building an entire community of single family homes.
Mm-hmm.
But Fannie and Freddie Mac, those are the government lending programs. They're classifying them as horizontal multifamily
Mm-hmm.
because some of our projects are all on one plat. Some
Mm-hmm.
of them are individual, and we're breaking them down. So if things went sideways, we launched in COVID, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we had to build in some serious contingency plans. So when we did that, we sat and said, okay, we don't know what's going to happen. The world's kind of gone crazy. How do we plan for this, right? So we individually plotted each one of those so that if things got crazy, we could sell off a couple and the project would still make sense and not, be in arrears or things of that nature. Because that's where you see projects go sideways, is where something crazy happens, prices, like we saw lumber prices go through the roof, right?
Yes.
I mean, all kinds of stuff. So it's like you got to build in those contingency plans. And so if the price keeps creeping up, it's no longer workforce housing. We're no longer meeting our need. And everything that you do when you're developing from the ground up is based on that business model. So it's like, oh, well, we'll just charge more rent. If your area can't support a higher rent, it doesn't do you any good. You're just going to have empty product sitting there. And nobody wants that. I mean, again, we're trying to create homes that people can afford to live in and move into and still be nice. So how do we do it streamlined and in a way that's cost effective?
So let me ask you this question. Didn't you start with the multifamily first or the value add, or did you start in the affordable housing to begin with?
Oh yeah. So I've actually never the little bit of affordable housing background I have was only to realize I don't ever want to do affordable housing under full blown renovations, 25 plus projects,
Mm-hmm.
and all value add. Every single one of them. None of them were luxury. So at the same time, some of them were ground up construction as well.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So how did you transition into the workforce housing? I mean, there has to be some switch has to be flipped that all of a sudden you saw there's an opportunity, like you mentioned, there's a housing crisis, not enough homes, and there's lot more demand. So how did you figure that out? What was that point of realization for you?
So for me, because we have the other businesses, we don't just have our multifamily business, and
Mm-hmm.
we've always had a single family renovation business. And the more I talked with our own tenants on our
Mm-hmm.
properties, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd ask them, why don't you ever buy a house, or why don't this, or why don't this? And they would come back with, oh, there's nothing available, or oh, there's nothing in our price point, or oh, so when our single family renovation business, again, we focused that business solely on workforce housing pricing. We're not doing custom homes. We're not doing any of that stuff. We're not just grabbing a deal just to grab a deal. We're still focused on that same thing. So then we just said, let's transition this, because the more the gap got bigger after COVID, and then the government started coming out and saying, we need more builders. And then we actually had some of our markets, some of our tenants actually sent us television advertisements where their local city governments were begging builders to come. We have 3,000 jobs. We need a minimum of 500 homes. Please come. And I'm like, wow, if that's not a message, I take that as a sign. So we switched and said, no, we're just going to focus on this. We need to meet a need. We need to meet a demand. And we need to do it in a way that's scalable, efficient, but also it's not going to sit empty, right? There's always going to be luxury that's out there. There's always going to be that opportunity, but how much of that sits vacant? And what did we see after COVID, right? And so people will go down. They'll come from a class A to a class B if times get tight. So it's recognizing where's that need the greatest, and building a solid, sustainable business model.
Wow, what a smart move. And first of all, looking at the gap, talking to people and figuring out the problem and then providing the solution. I love that analogy. Oh my God, you're super smart. So let me ask you this question. Once you figured out, these people cannot afford this home, there's affordability issue, and you thought, oh, maybe the workforce housing is gonna be the next good thing for us to do. So how did you decide which market, which area that you wanted to start?
Well, the same way I decided years ago with our single family renovation, we looked at, okay, we were already in non-landlord friendly states, and we did not want to stay in them. It was, it's like hitting your head against a rock wall constantly. So we're like, okay, let's make life easy, right? So let's look at, first off, landlord friendly states. Then it's, where's everybody moving? And then we don't want to be there. And they're like, well, why would we not want to be there? And I said, because if we're going to do ground up construction, you need to be where the progress is going. So when you're finished, the people are coming. But if you go to an area that it's already full, right, the prices are going to be too high and this and that. So we started looking at all that. So we're actually focused along the I-10 corridor, which is the southern freeway that runs all along the United States. So we're literally from Jacksonville all the way over to Houston, all along there. That's where our focus is.
Nice. And that's a really good area, really good market. So why BTR or horizontal multifamily? That's like fancy name for it.
Yeah. So the biggest reason is because multifamily has always made sense, right? There's very little about it that doesn't make sense. But when my builder and our finance partner and all of us sat down and we said, okay, how can we do this in a way that makes sense, but is scalable? Because if we're just creating more jobs for ourselves, that's not really scalable. Eventually everybody wants to retire, right? We don't want to keep doing this forever. All of us are trying to get our time back, not just for our families, but we're huge community advocates. And so we're out in the communities and we want to have our time available to take care of our communities and to be there and take care of those needs. So we're looking at this going, okay, so if we build them, but we rent them, right? Now we're changing that model a little bit and recognizing that once the government, Fannie and Freddie said, yeah, that's just horizontal multifamily, we'll do that. It's like the banks are like 20 years behind, right? So once the banks start going, well, yeah, we'll do that, you're good. If a bank says it, you're good. So for us, it was a matter of finding a way to be scalable. Then we can pick and choose the projects that we'll keep and which ones we'll sell. And the ones that we keep, we'll just continue to scale out and build in, again, more sustainable ways. Because we don't want to just be a flash in a pan and just go into a market and then be gone tomorrow and go to another market. That's not what our goal is. Our goal is to have good projects and good areas that we can reach those communities. Especially as a Christian, we're out there trying to reach these communities in a very impactful way, be in the hands and feet of Jesus. And to do that, we got to be there, right? We can't just be leaving every year.
Oh my God, that touched my heart right there. Because see, when you're trying to create an impact or trying to make a difference in other lives around you, things happen for you organically. And you mentioned something very good here, scalable and getting your time back, because everybody is working for the same purpose, because everybody wanted to get time back and enjoy their life. I mean, that's what we are here for, actually. You follow Jesus and then I follow Hindu mythology is the same thing, by the end of the day, because I just feel like God is one. And then no matter whatever way you approach or whatever path you pick to get there, and by the by the end of the day, we are here to enjoy our life and touch other lives around us, and which you guys are doing. You travel a lot. We'll talk about that too. But my question is here is when you're trying to scale and trying to get your time back, and already you had a bunch of multifamily properties value as. Now you got your hands into this BTR community and new development, and I can see how much work is involved. So it was just like adding more work to yourself for you and your husband, not getting yourself free or getting the time to travel. But you guys are doing seamlessly, traveling all across America and then just living the life that you wanted to live. So if you can share that with me, how did that happen? What did you do? How did you delegate? How did you scale and got your time?
Sure. Well, so one of the biggest things is originally when I started my businesses way back in the day, my thought was never to have employees. In my world, that just made no sense at all. I'll just do it myself. It'll be fine. And then as I grew as a business owner, realized, oh, wait, I might need employees. And then it was like herding cats. And I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to do a better job as a leader to get better teams.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we quickly learned, especially when you have, 5,000 doors and all that, your teams are your weak link. So they'll be your strength or your weak link. So we have learned to be very, very picky about who we partner with. We have learned systems and processes to put in place what things are worth tracking and what things aren't worth tracking. And, which hill are you going to die on today? Because does it really matter in the bigger scope of things? Because sometimes we can get so tunnel vision, and our team members can be that way. And if we can't get them to step back and realize, okay, hey, we understand this, we understand that, and we can't get them to have that conversation. And I think that's what we learned through COVID was the danger. There was so much hostility, so much anger from people and frustration, and they just felt like everything was out of control and they had no control. So we've just tried to really work on finding ways to empower our teams and do it in a way that really just builds not just confidence in them, but in us. So during COVID, when I flew, I have a lung condition. I actually have a tumor and I cannot wear a mask. My doctor said, absolutely not. So during COVID, I flew all over the country with no mask. Every airport, you never saw a mask. It didn't happen. Then October rolls around. So at that month, we're 6-7 months into it. And a pilot finally leaves his seat and is physically going to eject me off a plane if I don't put a mask on. My husband was livid, and I've got a medical card and everything, and it didn't matter, right? Everybody else's fear was more important than my safety and my health. Right. So my husband looked over me, said, honey, I'm never going to ask you this again. Will you please put your mask on? And I put the mask on, and that night he started looking for an RV. He said, we're done. You're never going to fly again. We're not going to have to deal. We're not going to let somebody else dictate to us what we get to do or not do, or what's important to us, and your life is important too. So at that point, once we started looking at the RV and situation and figuring that out, and we started realizing, well, man, wouldn't it be great if my Florida teams need me all winter long, but my Pacific Northwest team needs me all summer long? Wouldn't that be phenomenal, right? And, of course, we were thinking about it selfishly, but on the other hand, our teams were so encouraged when they saw what we had to go through to get to them. When our Texas teams got to see us, and they see us pull up in the bus and they see us, and it was so encouraging to them to see that we were out there doing it and we weren't going to let the world dictate to us. And it was like, okay, we can do this. We can do this in a way that's valid, but it's hard, right? Sometimes we have to stop and go, okay, I have to have signal today, honey. We cannot travel today. We have to be, still or at a place. Sometimes I'm doing meetings in a Starbucks or something. Other times I'll have great signal. We'll be parked somewhere, things like that. But it takes a little bit more logistics, right? Planning and things of that nature. But it also allots for, we've seen amazing things all across this country. We've gone through multiple tornadoes and hurricanes, and those were brand new experiences for us. And You know, you get to experience life in a whole different way. And it was so much more fulfilling than just staying at home and watching everybody else's life on TV.
Whoa, I love that. So let's talk about your travel experience here now, since you're talking about that, because I wanted to ask you about the system and processes. I have a question regarding that. But with this all travel that you're doing, getting your RV and being with your team wherever they need you, traveling throughout the year, multiple places. So how does that feel? Because you're not always, stationed at one place. You're traveling, you're seeing the country. And how does that experience added more to your personal growth?
It forced me to be a little bit more organized and diligent. So, for instance, if I know we're going to be in Clearwater, Florida, and I know there's a bunch of things I want to do there, I want to see the marine reserves, and I want to see the dolphins, and I want to see this, and I want to see that, and those items may only be open certain times of the day. For whatever reason, things down there shut down at like 6 o'clock. So if you're working, you're pretty much not able to do any of that stuff. So I'm like, oh, so I had to stop and think through, well, wait, I'll just shift all this. I'll do this. I'll do this. And I started prioritizing my day around what I wanted to do instead of what I had to do. So that the things I had to do still got done, but it just meant, maybe I was working, say, 6 a.m. till 2 and I was off. And then the rest of the day we were going out and playing. Or maybe I would be working at night because I was dealing with West Coast folks and it was, their time of day or whatever. And so it meant I needed to be more organized and more diligent, but it also meant I was more intentional about doing what I wanted to do and exploring and seeing. And I'm a mountains and a beach girl. So if there's too much concrete in my world, I am not a happy camper. So, living day to day in the same place all the time, nothing wrong with that. But I noticed I developed some very bad habits, things that you take for granted. So like now I'm not really feeling the need to go out and buy more clothes because my closet's only so big, right? I just don't have all this extra room. And then I'm like, oh, now I have all this time because I'm not having to do this. And so I just became more intentional about what really mattered to me and what my time was actually used for. And we got to spend so much more time with our family, with friends all across this country. We've got many business relationships and things. And so to have that time was so much better for us.
So if I repeat that, you said you became much more aware and you prioritize things in a way, whatever was more meaningful to you, you were just focusing on that, not the unnecessary things. Because what happened is most of the time we just like waste our time on the unnecessary things around this because we just feel like we have to do this, and not really realizing what is more important or needed at this time for me to, move the needle. So that's what you did, which is awesome. So I wanted to come back to your system and processes that you talked about earlier, that you created the systems and processes. And especially it's very, very important when you're hiring more people, your team is getting bigger, you need to have some system and processes in place. Well, how did you do that? If you can shed some light on that.
Sure. So early on, it was, Excel spreadsheets in a Google Drive folder, right? And then it got a little bigger, and then it got a little bigger. And then when I've lost like the 8th person, I'm like, okay, we need to simplify this because I'm tired of losing everything and having to recreate it, right? So then it's, okay, now which kind of project management software are we looking at? Which CRM are we looking at? And then I realized too much of that was dictated by whatever team members came and what they were familiar with. And I said, no, we're done. I'm going to pick what I want and what works for me. I'm going to build the systems, and then you guys are going to do what you're told. And if you don't, well, then you're not a good fit. It's pretty simple. So we've had a lot of turnover because of that, because people want to do things their way. But what I have learned, I'm an accountant. Believe it or not, I'm an accountant by trade. I don't like it. Just because I got it doesn't mean I like it, right? So every accountant has a different way to do the exact same task. And it's a personal preference. And it's amazing to me that people don't understand that. They think every accountant should be doing it the exact same way, but it just doesn't work like that. So the same is true with our team members. So when I had to look at our systems and go, okay, I need something that isn't linked to some PC, or if it was a server, I needed to be able to access it remotely and that everybody on the team could access no matter where they were. And once we figured out, okay, which one's going to work for that, then it's okay, now that we've got that, okay, now we're going to use this project management software. And the reason we didn't use project management software for a long time, I tried to early on let people figure out how to do that on their own and try to empower them that way.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Employees need to be told what to do. They need to know what your expectation is, not because they can't think, but they're not paid to think. They're paid to do a job. So you need to tell them, this is the job, this is what I want you to do. Anything above and beyond that is totally different. But so I had to step back and go, okay, let's reevaluate. This isn't working. Why isn't it working? And so that always meant looking at me, right? So I had to do some personal training on my part of it and figure a few things out. Then when I sat down and said, okay, now we've got the CRM, and we have different CRMs for different systems in our business, right? Because I got different businesses and they have different needs. Would I love that they were all in one? Yes, that would be fantastic, but we're not there, right? So in the meantime, it just is what it is. So then we had to figure out a way that everybody, if this person was gone, we started cross-training. Somebody else could cover them, right? Because it never fails. Somebody's out sick, somebody's, there's a death in the family, whatever. And so then it was a matter of, okay, let's check our systems. So it never fails, right? Something breaks, somebody's gone, somebody's out with a death. Next thing you know, you have 45 deals that aren't getting analyzed because it's sitting in that person's inbox. And so we had to sit back and go, okay, so if this happens, what happens then? And so kind of build that out. So then we created all of our standard operating procedures and what those look like. And that's always a work in progress. Did it start that way day one? No. And do we tweak them all the time? Yes. Yeah, right. Sometimes it's recognizing this isn't working or this is, and then when we get it built out enough, okay, now let's hand it off to a new team member, bring on someone else, pass it off. And then so we have our core team members that we work with and what about this and really kind of iron sharpeneth iron. And then we turn around, build it up, then hand it off to the right people on the next side and then keep doing the same thing. Because as a business, you're always growing. You should be always growing, but you should also be evolving to whatever those needs are. And sometimes those needs are people, right? And people need to be encouraged, and that takes time and energy. And if I can't encourage them, then I'm probably failing as a boss somewhere.
Yeah, I like that. You said it very well. You said a few items, like you said, the employees are supposed to do whatever you tell them. They have a tunnel vision, because the thing is, you need to bring them into your vision, because they do not have the vision. Their vision is only the task that's given to them. And they are trying to scale from their perspective, whatever their perspective is. Maybe maybe they're working full-time for you, or maybe they're working part-time for you, and they're working for 3-4 other people part-time, So they have different SOPs for them, or different systems or processes that they're following. So their vision is not always the same. Because if people think most of the time, okay, I'm going to hire somebody and I'm going to scale, okay, I'm just going to delegate this whole thing or just drop everything off to this person and it's going to be handled very easily, seamlessly. That's not going to happen, because I did that to myself, So you have to have the system and processes in place and repeatable. So if somebody leaves, somebody else come in, you just say, okay, here you pick up from here. And the second thing you mentioned is, they need to be brought into your vision, whatever your vision is. Yes, they have their personal vision, they have their personal growth, they have their personal scalability, whatever they wanted to do in their life. But at the same time, they need to be brought into your picture, which is the bigger picture, seeing the same goal, because they're part of your team. So at this point, I'm going to ask you this question about communication, because you said you encouraging your employee all the time. You wanted to make sure they are at a good position to produce the results that you're looking for. So what is your communication style, or how did you figure out, this is the best way I should be working with my employees to get the most out of them?
So one of the gifts that I'm very, some people call it intuitive, some people call it discernment. I pick things up pretty quick. So I may not necessarily know exactly the challenge or the problem, but I'll pick up something's not right. And that kind of is in a variety of ways. So with employees and when systems are breaking down, there's a reason. And the reason almost always comes back to a person. So whether it's a person not doing the system the way they're supposed to, or whether it's a glitch in the system, right? Then there's ways. So if you don't have KPIs that you're tracking, and so forever I didn't do KPIs and I wasn't tracking any of them. And what I found was everybody was discouraged. They didn't see the good. We focus so much in society on the negative. They don't see the good that they're doing, what they're accomplishing every single day. So when we started having, we already have our daily huddles and such, but when we started putting down, like every day they have to put their wins down, oh, I made 10 sales calls, or, oh, I did this, or, oh, I got 5 deals analyzed, or 2 deals under, whatever it is, they have to put that down. Then we start looking back and going, oh, well, this week I got 10 deals under contract, but they may not have even remembered that because all they were thinking about was the 20 they didn't get analyzed, right?
Yeah.
They focused on the wrong thing. So I had to really stop and go, okay, how can I find a way to focus on the right things, right? The positive. And as an entrepreneur, Dan Sullivan just came out with a book, The Gap and the Gain. Man, he hits the nail on the head, because we focus so much on the gap, what we're lacking, what that negative is, that we forget how much we've already accomplished. Right? We think we need to be perfect today. It's like, I'm not going to be perfect today. I'm never going to be perfect. If I'm going to be perfect, I'll be dead and in heaven. So if I stop striving for that, but just keep focusing on, am I better yet today than I was yesterday? Okay, bonus, let's keep going forward, right? Oh, we've already crossed the finish line. Let's keep going, right? So I think for me, it was just recognizing how to redirect the mindset so that we're focused on the right things, because it's tough, right? You got to have accountability. And I still get called the capital B on a regular basis, right? Because, at the end of the day, we still have to have accountability, right? Don't tell me you've had 2 leads come in and you're doing your job marketing. No, you would have more than 2 leads. So what does that look like? Let's look at what those things are and let's have those conversations. Now, I'm not going to beat you up over it. We're going to figure it out, but you're going to have to be open and have that conversation. Because if you just shut down and we never have that conversation, well, you're not going to last long. So for me, it's an open communication style. I would rather somebody literally, man, Bethany, I totally screwed up. I dropped the ball. I cannot believe I did that. And then, but I'm going to do better. Okay, great. What are you going to do that's going to make it better? Well, how are you going to prevent that from happening again? And then we figure out the solution and then they move forward. It doesn't matter to me if you make 100 mistakes, as long as you learn from it, pick up from it, and move along. So that's just part of being an entrepreneur, and that's just life in general.
Very nice. It's just like giving them direction. I really like that. And also you talk about the gap and the gain. So whatever you focus on, you track that. You might have heard that, where focus goes, energy flows. So if you're focusing on gap, which 99.9% of the people that do, gap and the negativity, unknowingly they're attracting that. And then they say the law of attraction does not work. So
right.
I'm going to ask you the last question. We're out of time. You've been in multifamily value adds. Now you're in the BTR or the workforce housing. So are you syndicating all these deals, first of all?
Yes. And we're still in multifamily value add. We're still doing both.
So you're still doing your syndication, you're syndicating across the board. So the question here I wanted to ask you, you're syndicating the value adds, multifamily, and you're doing the BTR community and the workforce housing. What is the difference that you have felt between the 2 asset classes, or any major difference from the investor perspective and as well as from the general partnership perspective?
So in regards to build to rent versus a value add multifamily, most people think of the value add multifamily and they think they're cash flowing day one. They're not. And they need to get it in their head that they're not. It's really not until year 2 you can start to see cash flow, and then potentially year 3. That's the realistic side of things. Some deals you'll have one off and they'll be great right out of the gate, but not all of them are like that.
That's true.
In build to rent, it's the same thing, but people aren't used to seeing dirt. And how long do we have to look at this dirt? When are the sticks going up? And when is this? So it's a different mindset in understanding the process, right? Like they had the wettest winter ever down there. And so our roads got delayed. So our roads are just now going in, and they were supposed to be done in February. We can't control the weather, right? But we think, oh, I'm from Washington, rain. What are you talking about? Shh, we're not sugar. It'll be fine. But the reality is they get inches of rain in minutes it'll take us 3 months to get an inch of rain in
Mhm.
Washington. So
Mhm.
it's a different kind. And so understanding the timing of build to rent and but the difference is the scalability, right? That legacy wealth that you're creating as an investor, you get a little more cash flow on that multifamily value add, and you get a pretty good return on that sale of that property, but you're generally almost always selling those properties.
Mhm.
We're, because of us building them, we're able to, yes, get a little bit of cash flow,
Mhm.
but the majority of it comes in that legacy because we're able to sell or refinance them
Yeah. Mhm.
because of our numbers and still give you a great return. And then
Mhm.
you're just cash flowing phenomenally for there on out. So number wise, legacy wise, especially if you're trying to build out a retirement, things like that, and double and triple your returns, things like that, it's far more growth potential than just the value add, for sure. But again, it does take the right operator and the right systems in place to pull it off.
That's good. I think some of the new investors, they get a little bit hesitant or worried when they do not see the cash flow, because a lot of people are, in the multifamily investing is for cash flow as well. So those people might not understand, because they get a little bit nervous. They feel like, oh my God, I did not get any return for 2 years, 3 years. So I don't even know where my money is going. So it's a little bit concept that has to be cleared at their end from the investing perspective, and they need to be on board with it, right? In order to
Well, and the reality is they're still gaining. That's the thing they don't
exactly.
understand, right?
Mhm.
They're looking at a 401k, and what are they doing? They're looking at that printout that they've sent to them once a year, quarterly or whatever. And are they really gaining a gain? No, they're almost always losing. And then at the end
Exactly.
of the year, when they annualize it, oh, then there's a little bit of a 4% gain or something like that.
Yeah,
Where in these, you're still gaining. It's the same thing. It's on paper, right?
I
And
agree
that
with you.
number is still there and the value is still there, so that even when shares and things are sold, it's revalued, right? And so they just don't ever equate the two, because you're not getting cash flow into your account when you're losing in the stock market. When your 401k is going down, you're just exiting, that money is just exiting your account, but they're not really pointing that part of it out to you, right? They only want to
That's
point out
true.
that the positive. Hey, pay attention to this part.
That's true. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, actually, as a matter of fact, and this person was telling me, oh, no, 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 I don't want to touch my Roth or my 401k. I'm like, yeah, but think about that, how much money you're making there. And then all these, I would use the word custodians or Charles Schwab or JP Morgan, all these custodians out there, they are making money off of your money, right? They're not letting the money
Right.
sit in the account. They are utilizing that money to make more money. So why can't you do the same thing for yourself? You know, you can
Right.
always, you have the liberty to change that to a self-directed IRA account, and you can put it in the private placement, and you can let your money work for you and let the money grow like the bigger institutions are doing that. But anyways, this brings us to our golden nugget of the day. I didn't ask you that. Can you share one golden nugget with my audience before we go to a rapid fire round?
What are we looking for?
Any golden nugget from you?
Done is better than perfect. I am constantly telling that all the time. At the end of the day, we're always either afraid to do something because it's not right or it's not perfect,
Mhm.
and then you do nothing, or you start to do something, you get some momentum, and oh, it's not right. So then you just stop. And done is better than perfect. Just get the momentum, just get going. You'll figure it out as you go. A moving wheel does get traction.
That's good. I like that. So this moves us to our rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You have to answer in one word or one sentence only. So are you ready?
Okay.
So first question is, what is one of the most important thing that you have learned in your life, and how did your life change after learning it?
Most important thing I learned about life, and how did I think the most important thing I learned was everything is negotiable.
I like that. Share one good book that you have liked and recommend to my audience.
The Millionaire Mindset by Harv Eker.
Eckert. I have that one too. That's a good one.
It's a good
In
one.
one word, what does life mean to you?
Hmm. Hmm. I don't know. That's tough to make it only one word.
That should be easy for you with all this
Community.
traveling.
Community.
I
Yeah,
like that.
probably community.
Uh, that's a good one, actually. What is your biggest passion?
Reaching others for Christ.
If you could turn back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself and why?
It doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. And it doesn't even matter if everybody else understands. Keep moving forward with the plans I've been given, and I'll continue to succeed.
I love that. So how can people reach out to you?
So they can reach me on LinkedIn, or I have a YouTube channel just chock full of free, valuable information. I go everything through, passive income and investing to credit hacking tips to, I put RV stuff up there. So all kinds of fun stuff on there. But yeah, so our YouTube channel is American Made Home Solutions, and they can find me there, or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Good. Thanks for coming to my show, Bethany. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Vinky. I appreciate you having me on here today.